Watch this every day, not for entertainment, not for comfort, but as a reminder of who you are becoming. Life does not change because you wish it to. Life changes because you decide to act differently, consistently, especially on the days when you do not feel like it. If you are waiting to feel ready, motivated, or confident, you will wait forever. Readiness is not a feeling, it is a decision. Every morning, you wake up with two options. You can follow the voice that seeks comfort, or you can follow the voice that demands growth. The comfortable voice is persuasive. It tells you to delay, to rest more, to choose the easy path. It promises relief but delivers regret. The demanding voice is quieter. It does not negotiate. Simply asks one question: what must be done today? Your life moves in the direction of the voice you obey most often. Discipline is not punishment, it is alignment. It is choosing your future over your mood. Motivation will betray you. It will disappear the moment effort is required. Discipline remains. Discipline carries you through boredom, through resistance, through doubt. The strongest people are not those who feel inspired every day. They are the ones who act when inspiration is absent. Your mind is powerful, but it is not always truthful. It exaggerates fear, magnifies discomfort, and creates excuses that sound reasonable. If you believe every thought, you will stay exactly where you are. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who chooses whether to follow them. The moment you learn to observe the mind instead of obeying it, you regain control of your life. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Do not exist. There will always be fatigue, fear, uncertainty, and distraction. Growth begins the moment you act anyway. Small actions done daily will change your life faster than occasional bursts of effort. Consistency builds identity. Identity shapes behavior. Behavior shapes destiny. Discomfort is not a signal to stop. It is a signal that you are expanding. Every time you choose to stay when everything inside wants to escape, you grow stronger. Avoiding discomfort shrinks your world. Facing it expands your capacity. The pain you avoid today returns as limitation tomorrow. The discomfort you embraced today becomes strength later. Silence is where power is built. In silence, excuses lose their influence. In silence, you confront who you are without distraction. Noise weakens focus. Stillness sharpens it. Learn to sit with yourself without reaching for escape. The ability to remain still focused. Present is a rare skill, and rare skills create extraordinary lives. Take responsibility for everything within your control. Responsibility is not blame, it is freedom. When you stop blaming circumstances, people, or the past, you regain agency. You may not control what happens to you, but you always control how you respond. That response determines the direction of your life. Ownership removes helplessness and replaces it with power. Do not announce your goals. Do not seek validation. Work in silence. Let results speak. Progress made quietly is more stable because it is not dependent on praise. Build discipline when no one is watching. Build character when no one is applauding. This is where real confidence comes from. Your future is built in ordinary moments, in getting up when the alarm rings, in choosing focus over distraction, in doing the work even when it feels pointless. These moments seem insignificant, but they accumulate. One disciplined day does not change your life. Hundreds of them do. You will fail. Running through the park, you will doubt. You will want to quit. This is part of the process, not a sign that something is wrong. What matters is not perfection, persistence. When you fall, return. When you lose focus, reset. When progress feels slow, continue. The only real failure is stopping. Watch this every day because repetition shapes the mind. What you repeatedly expose yourself to becomes your inner voice. Let this be the voice that reminds you that you are capable of more than you are currently demanding of yourself. Let it remind you that strength is built, not gifted. Let it remind you that your life is not waiting for motivation, permission, or luck. It is waiting for disciplined action, taken daily, in silence, with responsibility, with patience, with courage, with consistency, with effort, with awareness, with control, with purpose, with resolve, with resilience, with focus, with endurance, with humility, with commitment, with self-respect, with repetition, with clarity, with restraint, with presence, with choice, with ownership, with intention, with action. And again until the life you once imagined becomes the life you are living. Discipline before motivation is a truth that most people resist because it removes comfort from the equation. Motivation feels good. It feels inspiring, emotional, and powerful in the moment. Discipline feels heavy, repetitive, and often unrewarding in the short term. The difference between people who transform their lives and people who remain stuck is not talent, intelligence, or luck, their relationship with discipline. Motivation waits for the right mood. Discipline acts regardless of mood. Motivation asks how you feel today. Discipline asks what must be done today. Motivation is unreliable by nature. It depends on external triggers, a video, a speech, praise, success, or fear. When those triggers disappear, motivation collapses. That is why people start strong and quit silently. Discipline does not rely on emotion. It relies on decision. Once a decision is made, discipline carries it forward even when enthusiasm fades. This is why discipline builds consistency, and consistency builds identity. When you repeatedly show up despite resistance, you stop negotiating with yourself. You no longer ask whether you feel like doing the work. You simply do it. The mind is skilled at self-deception. It convinces you that waiting for motivation is reasonable. It says tomorrow will be better, energy will return, conditions will improve. Discipline exposes these lies. It reveals that progress has never required perfect conditions, only commitment. Every meaningful change in life demands repeated effort under imperfect circumstances. Discipline trains you to act within reality rather than fantasy. It removes excuses by replacing them with structure. People often misunderstand discipline as punishment. In truth, discipline is self-respect in action. It is choosing long-term benefit over short-term comfort. When you keep promises to yourself, you strengthen trust with yourself. When you break them, you weaken it. Over time, this inner trust shapes confidence. Confidence does not come from affirmations or words. It comes from evidence. Discipline provides that evidence daily. Each completed task becomes proof that you are capable of directing your life. Motivation is emotional energy. Discipline is trained behavior. Emotional energy fluctuates. Trained behavior remains stable. Athletes, artists, and masters of any craft do not rely on motivation to practice. They rely on systems. They show up even when tired, bored, or discouraged. They understand that mastery is the result of thousands of ordinary days executed with discipline. The mind may resist repetition, but repetition is where skill is forged. Discipline also simplifies life. When discipline is absent, every action becomes a debate. Should I wake up now or sleep longer? Should I train today or rest? Should I focus or procrastinate? These constant negotiations drain mental energy. Discipline removes the debate. Decisions are made once and followed many times. This creates clarity. Clarity creates calm. Calm allows focus. Focus allows progress. Many people chase motivation because they fear discomfort. Discipline requires confronting discomfort directly. It requires acting while the body resists and the mind complains. Discomfort is not harmful. It is informative. It signals growth, adaptation, and expansion. Discipline teaches you to tolerate discomfort without reacting emotionally. This skill transfers to all areas of life. You become less reactive, more stable, and more deliberate. Challenges stop feeling overwhelming and start feeling manageable. Discipline builds freedom, not restriction. At first, structure feels limiting. Over time, it becomes liberating. Disciplined body has more energy. A disciplined mind has more clarity. A disciplined schedule creates more. When you are disciplined, you are no longer controlled by impulses, cravings, or moods. You choose your actions instead of reacting to urges. This is real freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to do what matters. Waiting for motivation often hides a deeper issue, fear of failure. Motivation protects the ego. If you only act when you feel motivated, you can blame lack of motivation when you fail. Discipline removes that protection. It forces accountability. When you commit to disciplined action, results become your responsibility. This can be uncomfortable, but it is necessary. Responsibility is the foundation of personal power. Without it, growth is impossible. Discipline is not about intensity. It is about consistency. Small, disciplined actions performed daily outperform occasional bursts of motivation. One focused hour every day beats 10 chaotic hours once a week. Discipline respects time. It understands that progress compounds. Missed days break momentum. Completed days build it. Over time, discipline reshapes your self-image. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who does. The hardest part of discipline is the beginning. Body and mind resist change because they are optimized for efficiency, not growth. Discipline introduces new demands, and resistance is a natural response. The mistake is interpreting resistance as a signal to stop. In reality, resistance is a signal that discipline is necessary. Each time you act despite resistance, you weaken its influence. Over time, discipline becomes easier, not because the work becomes easy, but because you become stronger. Discipline is a daily practice. It is built through repetition, not intention. You do not become disciplined by thinking about discipline. You become disciplined by choosing the harder option again and again until it becomes normal. This choice is rarely dramatic. It happens in quiet moments, getting up when the alarm rings, starting before you feel ready, continuing when no one is watching. These moments shape your future more than any burst of motivation ever could. Motivation may start the journey, but it cannot sustain it. Discipline carries you through boredom, doubt, fatigue, and fear. It holds the line when emotions fluctuate. It turns effort into habit and habit into identity. When discipline comes first, motivation often follows, but it is no longer required. The work gets done regardless. The days stack up. Progress becomes inevitable. And eventually, you realize that the life you once waited to feel motivated for has been built quietly through disciplined action, through choices made without applause, through moments where quitting would have been easier, through mornings where comfort was denied, through repetition that seemed insignificant at the time, through patience that outlasted excitement, through commitment that remained even when belief wavered, through action taken in silence, through discipline that did not ask for permission from motivation, through effort that continued even when the mind questioned its value, through days that felt ordinary but were shaping something extraordinary, through consistency that slowly transformed struggle into strength, weakness into control, chaos into order, and intention into reality, through discipline that came first, always first, before emotion, before desire, before inspiration, before motivation, before the mind could interfere, before excuses could form, before comfort could negotiate, before fear could take control, before doubt could speak, before the urge to stop could grow, through discipline that acted without waiting, without needing to feel ready, without seeking validation, without demanding certainty, through discipline that chose action again and again, day after day, moment after moment, shaping a life not driven by how one feels, but by what one decides to do in the face of resistance, pressure, uncertainty, and the quiet temptation to delay just once more. The mind is the first battlefield of every human life. Long before actions are taken, words are spoken, or decisions are visible to the world, everything begins internally. Control the mind, and you control the direction of your life. Lose control of the mind, and life becomes reactive, chaotic, and driven by impulses rather than purpose. Most people believe their circumstances shape their thoughts, but in reality, their thoughts shape how they experience circumstances. Same situation can break one person and strengthen another, depending entirely on who is in control of the mind. The mind is not designed to lead. It is designed to protect, to seek comfort, and to avoid pain. Left unmanaged, it constantly searches for the easiest path. It exaggerates fear, magnifies discomfort, and creates stories that justify inaction. When the mind is allowed to dominate, it becomes a tyrant. It pulls attention toward distractions, pleasure, and avoidance. This is why so many people feel busy but unfulfilled, active but directionless, exhausted but unaccomplished. Their mind is in control, not them. Control of the mind does not mean suppressing thoughts or emotions. It means observing them without obeying them. Thoughts arise automatically, shaped by past experiences, habits, and conditioning. You are not responsible for every thought that appears, but you are responsible for whether you follow it. The moment you believe every thought is the moment you surrender control. Mastery begins when you recognize that a thought is simply an event in the mind, not a command. The mind constantly comments on everything. It judges, compares, complains, and predicts. Most suffering is not caused by reality itself, but by the mind's interpretation of reality. A challenge becomes unbearable only when the mind labels it as unfair or impossible. Pain becomes prolonged when the mind replays it repeatedly. Fear becomes paralyzing when the mind projects worst-case scenarios that may never occur. When the mind is uncontrolled, lives in the past and future, rarely in the present. Life then feels heavy, rushed, or empty. Control begins with attention. Where attention goes, energy flows. An undisciplined mind leaks energy into meaningless thoughts, digital noise, and emotional reactions. Controlled mind directs attention intentionally. It chooses focus over distraction. It returns to the task at hand again and again. This ability to bring the mind back is more important than the ability to never lose focus. Losing focus is natural. Regaining it is training. Each return strengthens control. Emotions are powerful, but they are temporary. When emotions lead, decisions become unstable. One day you feel inspired, the next day discouraged. A controlled mind acknowledges emotions without allowing them to dictate behavior. You can feel fear and still act. You can feel tired and still move. You can feel doubt and still commit. Emotional maturity is not the absence of emotion, but the refusal to be ruled by it. The mind resists discomfort because discomfort threatens its sense of safety. Growth, however, requires discomfort. Learning, discipline, honesty, and effort all challenge the mind's desire for ease. When you control the mind, you no longer interpret discomfort as danger. You interpret it as a signal of expansion. This shift changes everything. Instead of avoiding difficulty, you approach it with curiosity and steadiness. You stop asking how to escape and start asking how to endure. Control of the mind creates internal stability. External circumstances will always change. Success and failure, praise and criticism, gain and loss are unavoidable. Without mental control, these fluctuations dictate your inner state. With control, your inner state remains grounded. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of explode. This stability becomes a form of strength that others can feel. It is calm under pressure, clarity in confusion, and restraint in provocation. Most destructive habits are not physical but mental. Procrastination, self-doubt, overthinking, and comparison all begin in the mind. When unchecked, they sabotage progress quietly. Controlling the mind means interrupting these patterns early. It means recognizing when the mind is spiraling and redirecting it. This redirection does not require force. It requires awareness. Awareness creates space. In that space, choice becomes possible. Silence plays a crucial role in mental control. A mind constantly stimulated loses sensitivity. Noise drowns intuition and weakens attention. Periods of stillness allow the mind to settle. In stillness, patterns become visible. You begin to see how often the mind repeats the same worries, the same excuses, the same narratives. Seeing clearly is the first step to changing them. Without silence, the mind remains hidden behind constant activity. Control of the mind also shapes identity. You become what you repeatedly think about. If the mind constantly focuses on limitation, weakness, and lack, those qualities define behavior. If it focuses on effort, responsibility, and growth, behavior follows. Identity is not fixed. It is reinforced daily through thought patterns. When you consciously guide those patterns, you actively shape who you are becoming. Mental control strengthens decision-making. Clear decisions require a quiet mind. When the mind is crowded with fear, desire, external opinions, decisions become confused. Control allows you to slow down, assess, and act deliberately. You stop reacting to urgency and start responding to importance. This changes the trajectory of life over time. Small, consistent decisions made from clarity compound into significant outcomes. The relationship between mind and life is inseparable. A chaotic mind creates a chaotic life. A disciplined mind creates a directed life. External success without internal control leads to instability. Internal control without external validation leads to peace. When the mind is under control, life becomes less about chasing and more about building, less about proving and more about progressing. Training the mind is not a one-time event. It is a daily practice. Every moment presents a choice: follow the impulse or observe it, react or respond, escape or endure. Each choice strengthens or weakens control. The results are not immediate, but they are cumulative. Over time, the mind becomes an ally instead of an obstacle. Thoughts become tools instead of traps. Emotions become signals instead of commands. When you control the mind, you reclaim authorship of your life. You stop being dragged by habits, moods, and circumstances. You begin to move with intention. Life does not become easy, but it becomes navigable. Challenges remain, but they lose their power to overwhelm. Direction replaces confusion. Purpose replaces noise. Control replaces chaos. And with that control, every area of life begins to align. Because the source of disorder has been addressed at its root. Because the inner world now leads the outer. Because actions are no longer dictated by fleeting thoughts. Because attention is no longer stolen by distraction. Because effort is no longer delayed by doubt. Because presence replaces avoidance. Because awareness replaces autopilot. Because the mind is no longer allowed to wander without direction. Because each moment becomes an opportunity to choose consciously. Because control is practiced in small moments that shape larger outcomes. Because mastery begins internally long before it appears externally. Because life follows the mind wherever it is led. Daily practice over occasional effort is the difference between transformation and illusion. Occasional effort feels powerful because it is intense. It creates a rush, a sense of commitment, and a temporary belief that change is happening. Daily practice feels ordinary. It is quiet, repetitive, and often unexciting. Yet real progress does not respond to intensity. It responds to consistency. Life does not change because of what you do once. It changes because of what you do repeatedly. Occasional effort is driven by emotion. A surge of motivation, a moment of clarity, or a sudden fear pushes you to act. You work hard for a short time, expect immediate results, and when those results do not appear, momentum collapses. Daily practice is driven by structure. It does not depend on how you feel. It depends on commitment. You show up whether the day feels good or heavy. This removes drama from progress and replaces it with reliability. The human mind is attracted to extremes. It prefers all or nothing. This is why people wait for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, or the perfect mood. Daily practice ignores perfection. It values presence over performance. Even minimal effort, when repeated daily, reshapes ability, identity, and outcomes. 10 minutes every day will outperform 2 hours once a week because continuity matters more than volume. It's built through repetition, not bursts. Muscles grow from repeated stress and recovery. Focus sharpens through repeated attention. Discipline forms through repeated choice. Occasional effort shocks the system but does not train it. Daily practice trains the nervous system, the body, and the mind to adapt. Over time, what once felt difficult becomes normal. What felt impossible becomes manageable. This gradual shift is invisible in the beginning, which is why many abandon the process too early. Daily practice creates momentum. Momentum is fragile when effort is inconsistent. Each gap breaks rhythm. Each missed day increases resistance to the next action. Consistent practice lowers resistance. The hardest part is starting. Once practice becomes part of the day, it requires less mental energy. You no longer negotiate with yourself. You no longer ask whether to do it. You simply do it. This simplicity protects progress. Occasional effort feeds the ego. It allows you to feel productive without being accountable. You can tell yourself you tried hard, even if nothing changed. Daily practice removes this illusion. Results become unavoidable. Progress becomes measurable. You either showed up or you did not. There is no hiding from repetition. This honesty is uncomfortable, but it is necessary. Growth requires truth. Time works differently with daily practice. Small actions compound. At first, results are barely noticeable. This is where most people quit. They mistake slow progress for no progress. But consistency builds beneath the surface. Neural pathways strengthen, habits solidify, capacity expands. Then, suddenly, progress becomes visible. What looks like sudden success is often the delayed effect of long-term daily effort. Occasional effort relies on willpower. Willpower is limited, fluctuates with stress, fatigue, and emotion. Daily practice relies on routine. Routine conserves willpower. When an action is scheduled and expected, it no longer competes with other decisions. This frees mental energy for creativity, focus, problem solving. Life becomes less exhausting when fewer decisions are required. Daily practice also builds trust with yourself. Every time you keep a small promise, you reinforce self-respect. Every time you break it, you weaken confidence. Confidence is not built by believing in yourself. It is built by proving to yourself that you follow through. Daily practice provides that proof quietly and consistently. Over time, self-doubt loses credibility because evidence replaces opinion. Occasional effort often targets outcomes. Daily practice targets process. Outcomes are uncontrollable in the short term. Process is always controllable. When you focus on daily practice, attention shifts to what you can do today. This reduces anxiety. You stop obsessing over distant results and start engaging fully with the present task. Ironically, this focus on process accelerates outcomes. The body and mind respond to rhythm. Daily practice creates rhythm. Waking, training, learning, and reflecting at consistent times conditions the system. Energy aligns. Focus improves. Resistance decreases. Occasional effort disrupts rhythm. It forces sudden demands without preparation. This leads to burnout or injury, both physical and mental. Sustainable growth respects rhythm. Daily practice also builds resilience. Showing up on difficult days trains endurance. You learn that discomfort does not stop you. You learn that fatigue does not define you. You learn that progress continues even when conditions are imperfect. This resilience extends beyond the practice itself. Challenges in life feel less overwhelming because you have trained yourself to persist without relying on ideal circumstances. Occasional effort encourages waiting for inspiration, clarity, or confidence. Daily practice encourages action first. Action generates clarity. Action builds confidence. Waiting delays growth. Daily practice eliminates waiting by making action non-negotiable. You no longer ask if you are ready. Readiness becomes irrelevant. Commitment becomes primary. Daily practice reshapes identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who practices. This identity shift is powerful. Influences future decisions automatically. When practice is part of who you are, inconsistency feels unnatural. Discipline stops feeling forced and starts feeling aligned. The simplicity of daily practice is deceptive. It lacks drama, intensity, and excitement. But simplicity is its strength. It is accessible, it is repeatable, it is sustainable. It does not require extraordinary talent or circumstances. It only requires showing up again and again and again. Occasional effort creates spikes. Daily practice creates lines. Spikes look impressive but fade quickly. Lines extend forward steadily. Life is built on lines, not spikes. Progress that lasts is rarely visible day to day. It reveals itself over months and years. Daily practice respects this reality. In the end, the difference between stagnation and growth is not knowledge, opportunity, or desire. It is behavior repeated consistently. Daily practice turns intention into structure. Structure turns effort into habit. Habit turns action into identity. Identity turns direction into destiny. Not through force, not through intensity, but through repetition, patience, and the quiet power of doing the same meaningful thing every day, regardless of mood, regardless of results, regardless of recognition, regardless of resistance, allowing time to work in your favor, allowing small actions to accumulate, allowing progress to unfold naturally, allowing effort to become effortless through familiarity, allowing growth to happen without urgency, allowing consistency to replace chaos, allowing discipline to outlast excitement, allowing the ordinary to produce the extraordinary through daily practice over occasional effort. Discomfort is not a mistake in life, it is a requirement. Everything that strengthens you passes through resistance first. Muscles grow by tearing, lungs expand by strain, and the mind sharpens by confronting what it wants to avoid. Yet most people spend their lives running from discomfort as if it were a warning sign. In reality, it is a direction sign. It points exactly toward the growth they claim to want but refuse to endure. The human instinct is to seek ease. Comfort promises safety, familiarity, and relief. But comfort also creates stagnation. When life becomes too comfortable, awareness dulls, discipline weakens, and potential shrinks. Discomfort interrupts this decay. It demands attention. It forces adaptation. When you embrace discomfort, you stop treating challenge as a threat and start treating it as training. Discomfort reveals truth. When the body is tired, when pressure increases, when fear rises, excuses fall apart, you see what you are actually capable of enduring. You learn how quickly the mind tries to escape, negotiate, or quit. This awareness is invaluable. You cannot strengthen what you refuse to observe. Avoiding discomfort hides weakness. Facing it exposes both weakness and strength, giving you something real to work with. Growth does not happen at the edge of comfort. It happens beyond it. Every meaningful skill requires repeated exposure to difficulty. The first attempts are awkward, uncomfortable, and humbling. This is where most people stop. They They mistake discomfort for incompetence. In reality, discomfort is proof that learning is happening. If something feels easy immediately, it is not expanding you. The mind exaggerates discomfort. It predicts unbearable outcomes, magnifies effort, and convinces you that stopping is necessary for survival. Most of these signals are false alarms. The body can endure far more than the mind allows. When you stay present through discomfort without reacting impulsively, you discover that intensity rises and falls like a wave. What felt overwhelming becomes manageable. What felt impossible becomes tolerable. This realization changes how you approach future challenges. Discomfort builds resilience. Each time you remain steady under strain, you reinforce the belief that you can handle difficulty. This belief becomes internal strength. Resilience is not toughness for show, it is quiet confidence built through experience. It is knowing that when pressure comes, you will not collapse or escape. You will breathe, focus, and continue. Avoidance weakens you gradually. Each avoided challenge makes the next one feel larger. The comfort zone shrinks, anxiety grows. Life becomes increasingly fragile. Embracing discomfort reverses this process. The more you face what you resist, the wider your tolerance becomes. Challenges that once felt overwhelming begin to feel normal. This expansion restores a sense of capability and control. Discomfort also sharpens focus. When conditions are challenging, distractions lose their appeal. Attention becomes centered on the present moment. This intensity can be uncomfortable, but it is also clarifying. You become aware of breath, posture, effort, and intention. This presence is powerful. It anchors you in reality instead of thought loops and imagined futures. Embracing discomfort requires humility. It forces you to accept that you are not as capable as you want to be yet. This acceptance is not weakness. It is honesty. Honest assessment allows improvement. Ego resists discomfort because it threatens identity. But identity that cannot withstand challenge is fragile. Discomfort strengthens identity by grounding it in action rather than self-image. There is a difference between harmful pain and constructive discomfort. Constructive discomfort signals growth, learning, and adaptation. It is effortful but controlled. Harmful pain signals damage and requires adjustment. Embracing discomfort does not mean recklessness. It means discernment. It means staying engaged where growth is possible while remaining attentive to limits. Discomfort teaches patience. Progress under strain is slow and demanding. Results do not appear immediately. This tests endurance not just physically, but mentally. You learn to continue without reassurance. You learn to trust process over emotion. Patience developed under discomfort carries into all areas of life, from relationships to work to personal goals. Modern life offers endless ways to escape discomfort. Entertainment, distraction, and convenience are always available. These escapes numb sensitivity, but weaken tolerance. When discomfort inevitably appears, it feels unbearable because the system is untrained. Choosing to face discomfort voluntarily restores balance. It reminds the nervous system that challenge is survivable and often beneficial. Discomfort also reveals priorities. When effort increases, unnecessary habits fall away. You become more selective with time, energy, and attention. What truly matters becomes clear. Comfort often allows excess and waste. Discomfort demands efficiency and intention. When you embrace discomfort, you stop waiting for perfect conditions. Perfect conditions do not exist. There will always be fatigue, doubt, fear, or inconvenience. Growth begins the moment you act anyway. This shift from waiting to engaging transforms momentum. Action replaces hesitation. Experience replaces imagination. Discomfort creates self-trust. Each time you remain present through difficulty, you prove to yourself that you can endure. This proof is stronger than any external validation. It builds inner stability. You stop fearing challenges because you have evidence of survival. Confidence becomes grounded rather than performative. Is clarity on the other side of discomfort. When effort is sustained, noise fades. Complaints lose power. The mind quiets. You experience a sense of alignment between effort and intention. This state cannot be accessed through comfort. Emerges only through engagement with resistance. Discomfort is temporary. Growth is cumulative. Willingness to endure short-term unease leads to long-term capability. Avoiding discomfort offers short-term relief but long-term limitation. This trade-off exists whether acknowledged or not. Choosing discomfort is choosing expansion. Embracing discomfort reshapes identity. You stop defining yourself by what feels good and start defining yourself by what strengthens you. This shift changes daily choices. You begin to lean toward effort instead of ease. Over time, what once felt uncomfortable becomes familiar. Familiarity does not remove effort, but it removes fear. Life will apply pressure regardless of preparation. Challenges are unavoidable. Choosing to embrace discomfort proactively prepares you for what you cannot avoid. It builds capacity before it is demanded. This preparation creates calm in crisis and steadiness under uncertainty. Discomfort is not something to eliminate. It is something to use. It is raw material for growth. When approached with awareness and intention, it becomes a teacher. It shows you where you are resisting, where you are capable, and where you must continue. Those who embrace discomfort do not seek suffering, they seek strength. They understand that ease is not the goal, capability is the goal. They understand that comfort fades, but capacity remains. They understand that the path forward is rarely gentle, but always honest. They understand that each moment of chosen discomfort builds a future that requires less fear, less avoidance, and less regret. Because the habit of facing what is difficult becomes natural. Because resistance loses its power through exposure. Because courage becomes a practiced response, because growth stops being accidental and becomes deliberate, because the line between who they are and who they could be is crossed not through wishing, but through staying present when everything inside demands escape. Silence builds power because it removes excess and reveals what remains. In silence, there is no audience, no distraction, no external reinforcement. What is left is the self, unfiltered and unprotected. Most people avoid silence not because it is empty, because it is honest. Noise allows escape. Silence demands presence. When the noise is removed, the mind becomes visible, and what is visible can be trained. Power is often mistaken for volume. Loud voices, constant opinions, visible reactions are seen as strength. In reality, constant expression is often compensation. Those who speak the most usually listen the least, and those who react immediately are often controlled by impulse. Silence interrupts this pattern. It creates space between stimulus and response. In that space, choice becomes possible. Choice is power. Silence sharpens awareness. When external input decreases, internal signals become clearer. Breathing becomes noticeable. Tension reveals itself, thought patterns surface. This awareness is uncomfortable at first because it exposes restlessness and lack of control. But awareness is the foundation of mastery. You cannot direct what you do not perceive. Silence turns attention inward and strengthens the ability to observe without reacting. The mind is constantly seeking stimulation, craves novelty, validation, and reassurance. Silence denies these cravings. This denial trains restraint. Restraint strengthens discipline. When the mind learns that it does not need constant input to survive, dependence weakens. You stop reaching for distraction reflexively. You begin to tolerate stillness. This tolerance is not passive. It is active control. Silence also builds emotional strength. When there is no immediate outlet, emotions must be processed rather than discharged. Anger, frustration, fear, and doubt lose their urgency when they are not acted upon instantly. Sitting with emotion without expression teaches stability. You learn that emotions rise and fall without needing reaction. This ability prevents unnecessary conflict and regret. It allows measured response instead of impulsive reaction. In silence, ego weakens. Ego feeds on recognition and expression. It wants to be seen, heard, and acknowledged. Silence offers none of this. Without feedback, ego loses reference points. This is uncomfortable because identity often depends on external response. But as ego quiets, clarity increases. Running through the park. You begin to act based on values rather than validation. This alignment creates inner strength that does not fluctuate with opinion. Silence strengthens focus. Continuous noise fragments attention. Notifications, conversations, and content pull the mind in multiple directions. Silence gathers attention into one place. It allows sustained concentration. This depth of focus increases efficiency and quality of work. Tasks that require hours of engagement become possible only when the mind is trained to remain with one thing without escape. There is also power in silent restraint during interaction. Not every thought needs expression. Not every reaction needs release. Silence in conversation can unsettle others, but it stabilizes you. It prevents escalation. It communicates control without explanation. Words spoken after silence carry more weight because they are deliberate. Silence filters speech. What remains is precise. Silence reveals intention. When action is not immediately taken, motives become clear. You begin to see whether you act from fear, desire, habit, or principle. This clarity improves decision-making. Decisions made from silence are less reactive and more grounded. They reflect long-term direction rather than short-term emotion. Modern life conditions the nervous system to constant stimulation. This weakens tolerance for stillness. Silence initially feels uncomfortable because the system is overstimulated. With practice, silence becomes restorative. The nervous system recalibrates. Stress decreases. Recovery improves. This restoration increases capacity. A calm system can handle more pressure than an agitated one. Silence also deepens discipline. When there is no external structure, internal structure must emerge. Sitting in silence requires commitment. The urge to move, check, or speak arises quickly. Each resisted urge strengthens control. This training transfers to other areas. The ability to resist distraction in silence becomes the ability to resist temptation in action. There is power in doing work without announcing it. Silence around effort prevents ego interference. Progress made in silence is more stable because it is not dependent on recognition. When results arrive, they stand on their own. Silent effort builds confidence quietly. You know what you have done even if no one else does. Silence cultivates patience. Without constant input, time feels slower. This exposes impatience. Learning to remain still while time passes trains endurance. Endurance is essential for long-term goals. Those who cannot tolerate silence often struggle with delayed results. Silence teaches waiting without anxiety. In silence, intuition becomes audible. Constant noise drowns subtle signals. When the mind quiets, intuitive understanding surfaces. This is not mystical. It is pattern recognition that requires calm to function. Silence allows the mind to integrate information instead of reacting to it. Insight emerges naturally when pressure is removed. Silence also protects energy. Speaking, reacting, and engaging constantly drains reserves. Silence conserves energy. Conserved energy can be directed intentionally. This makes action more effective. Instead of scattering effort across unnecessary engagement, energy is focused where it matters. The strongest individuals are often the quietest. Not because they lack voice, because they choose when to use it. Silence is not absence. It is containment. It holds power until release is necessary. Tension stored in a drawn bow, silence accumulates force. Silence trains independence. Without external input, reliance shifts inward. You stop needing constant affirmation or guidance. Decisions become self-directed. This autonomy strengthens confidence. You trust your judgment because it is not crowded by noise. Silence also reveals truth about priorities. When nothing demands attention, what the mind returns to repeatedly shows what matters. This insight allows realignment. You can redirect effort toward what aligns with values rather than distractions. Silence is uncomfortable because it removes escape. Discomfort is its value. It shows where control is weak. By staying present within silence, control strengthens. Over time, silence becomes familiar. Familiarity removes fear. What remains is steadiness. Power built in silence is quiet, stable, and difficult to disrupt. It does not rely on performance or reaction. It comes from knowing you can remain present without stimulation, remain calm without reassurance, remain focused without pressure, remain disciplined without supervision, remain grounded without noise, remain deliberate without urgency, remain aware without commentary, remain steady without movement, remain intentional without expression, remain in control when nothing is happening and no one is watching. When the mind wants to speak, move, distract, escape, and you choose stillness again and again, letting silence do its work, letting restraint shape strength, letting awareness deepen, letting control settle into the nervous system, letting power grow where it cannot be seen but can always be felt. Responsibility is freedom because it places control back where it belongs. When responsibility is avoided, life feels random, unfair, overwhelming. Events appear to happen to you rather than through you. Blame becomes a habit, and helplessness becomes familiar. Taking responsibility reverses this dynamic. It restores agency. When you accept responsibility for your actions, reactions, and direction, you stop waiting for permission to change. Many people associate responsibility with burden. They see it as weight, obligation, and restriction. In reality, the absence of responsibility is heavier. When nothing is owned, everything is endured. You carry frustration, resentment, and confusion without the power to resolve them. Responsibility simplifies life. It draws a clear line between what you can control and what you cannot. Energy is no longer wasted on complaints about external factors. It is directed inward toward action. Responsibility begins with honesty. It requires acknowledging where you are without distortion. This honesty can be uncomfortable because it removes excuses. But without honesty, improvement is impossible. Responsibility does not mean self-criticism. It means accurate assessment. You cannot change what you deny. Once reality is accepted, choice becomes available. Freedom is often misunderstood as unlimited options. True freedom is clarity of choice. Responsibility creates that clarity. When you know that outcomes are influenced by your decisions, decisions matter. You become deliberate. Instead of reacting to circumstances, you respond with intention. This shift reduces anxiety because unpredictability decreases. Even when outcomes are uncertain, effort is aligned. Responsibility removes the need for blame. Blame gives temporary relief but long-term stagnation. It keeps focus on others and conditions rather than behavior. Responsibility keeps focus on influence. Even when circumstances are unfair, response remains a choice. This does not deny difficulty, acknowledges power within difficulty. This perspective transforms obstacles into problems to solve rather than injustices to endure. Taking responsibility strengthens self-respect. Each time you own a mistake and correct course, integrity increases. Integrity is internal alignment between values and actions. This alignment produces confidence that is not dependent on success. You trust yourself because you know you will respond honestly when things go wrong. This trust is stabilizing. Responsibility also creates discipline. When you see yourself as the source of outcomes, consistency becomes logical. Excuses lose credibility. You stop negotiating with standards. Discipline stops feeling imposed and starts feeling chosen. This choice is empowering. You are not following rules, you are honoring commitments. Avoiding responsibility often looks like seeking permission, waiting for conditions, or blaming circumstances. These behaviors reduce pressure in the short term, but increase it over time. Responsibility introduces pressure immediately, but reduces it long term. Pressure applied voluntarily is lighter than pressure imposed externally. This voluntary pressure strengthens resilience. Responsibility clarifies relationships. When you own your emotions, communication improves. Instead of accusing, you express. Instead of expecting others to regulate your feelings, you regulate them yourself. This reduces conflict and dependency. Relationships become partnerships rather than battlegrounds. Responsibility also protects from victim identity. Victimhood removes accountability, but also removes power. It explains pain, but prolongs it. Responsibility does not deny harm or injustice. It simply refuses to let them define the future. This refusal is an act of strength. Freedom grows as responsibility increases. Skills improve when practice is owned. Health improves when habits are owned. Finances improve when choices are owned. Growth accelerates because feedback is accepted instead of resisted. Mistakes become data rather than personal attacks. Learning becomes continuous. Responsibility trains mental toughness. It requires facing consequences without avoidance. This builds emotional regulation. You stop being overwhelmed by discomfort because discomfort becomes part of the process. Endurance increases. Setbacks lose their ability to derail progress. Taking responsibility also reduces fear of failure. When failure is owned, it becomes temporary. It is no longer a judgment but a signal. Fear decreases because failure does not threaten identity. You are not your outcome. You are your response. Responsibility creates direction. When no one else is blamed, action becomes necessary. Movement replaces stagnation. Even small steps feel meaningful because they are chosen. Direction reduces overwhelm. You no longer attempt to control everything, only what is yours. Freedom through responsibility is quiet. It is not dramatic or rebellious. It is steady. It shows up in daily choices made without supervision. It is the freedom to wake early because you chose discipline. The freedom to speak honestly because you chose integrity. The freedom to endure difficulty because you chose growth. Responsibility also brings peace. When you stop resisting reality, energy returns. Acceptance removes friction. You no longer fight what is. You work with it. This cooperation reduces inner conflict. Taking responsibility does not mean isolating yourself. It means owning your role while accepting support. Responsibility and support coexist. One does not replace the other. Owning your effort does not prevent receiving help. It ensures help is used effectively. Over time, responsibility reshapes identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who reacts and start seeing yourself as someone who decides. This identity influences behavior automatically. Decisions align with long-term values rather than short-term comfort. Responsibility is freedom because it ends dependency. You no longer rely on motivation, validation, or circumstance to move forward. You rely on choice. Choice is the root of autonomy. Autonomy is the foundation of self-respect. Life will always contain uncertainty, difficulty, and limitation. Responsibility does not remove these, it removes helplessness. It transforms uncertainty into navigation, difficulty into training, and limitation into creativity. This transformation is internal, but its effects are external. Responsibility creates strength that cannot be taken away. External freedoms can be restricted. Internal responsibility cannot. It travels with you through success and failure. It stabilizes identity across change. The more responsibility you accept, the less controlled you feel by life. The fewer excuses you need, the clearer your path becomes. Responsibility does not cage you. It grounds you. It anchors effort. It focuses energy. It simplifies decisions. It builds resilience. It creates trust with yourself. It removes confusion, replaces resentment with action. It turns pressure into purpose. It turns discipline into choice. It turns effort into ownership. It turns survival into direction. It turns existence into authorship. It turns life from something that happens to you into something you actively shape moment by moment, decision by decision, response by response, without waiting, without blaming, without escaping. Because freedom was never the absence of responsibility. It was the acceptance of it.